In this video, I want to go over some of the key highlights of the Oklahoma State University LaTeX thesis and dissertation template. And this is an unofficial template that does comply with the standards as of 2 years ago. With any template, you want to be mindful that some things may have been updated. This was provided by a mechanical engineering graduate student, and it is available on his his GitHub repository. So to get to this page, github.com/mitchute/OSU LaTeX thesis template. Note there is a typo where thesis is missing the first S. Just as a caveat, if you ever, or side note, if you ever make your own template that you mean to distribute, check the spelling before you do so. So if you look for OK State thesis template, you should be able to find this also. So it's several files are included here. The README is brief and shows just a brief acknowledgement. If you are interested in getting this code, on the GitHub page there is a green box that says code and has an arrow suggesting that you can download it. I tend to download as a zip. I'm going to pause while I unzip this. After I've unzipped this, there's a folder OSU LaTeX Thesis Template Master, and there's a number of files inside of here. The main file is actually an example. And so this is what's generated if you run PDF LaTeX or Quick Build on the main.tex file. So some title of a thesis, the author and the degree, the thesis approval pages, acknowledgements, and then it goes into table of contents, list of tables, list of figures, abbreviations, and then actual content that's formatted nicely, multiple chapters, could have appendices, and OSU requires a vita. Some universities don't, and also references. These references are alphabetical. Probably many fields would like numbered references, particularly in a dissertation, which could get quite long. I'll also note that in this particular one, they used in the example, this is a section, a subsection, a sub-subsection, and a paragraph. Most of the time you wouldn't want to go that deep in numbering paragraphs, even if you wanted the formatting to be that deep. The table of contents would show, it is showing all of those layers of depth. Many universities specify that if you show this layer of depth for one spot, you have to show it everywhere, and that's more page numbers that need to be checked, and so the approval process is faster if you minimize the number of kind of depth. So this would be chapter, section, subsection, or chapter, section, subsection, sub-subsection, yes, not the paragraph rather. And so if you could avoid numbering those, you can put sub-subsection asterisk and then the content, and it wouldn't appear at that level in the table of contents. All right, so this is just a PDF showing that one thing about dissertations to note, many universities are very, very particular about the title page and about the signature pages. And so if you have any trouble with the customization of those in LaTeX, it is easy to simply do the whole document and then override those pages in a PDF with ones created in Word that you have measured very carefully what the gap is between name of my thesis and thesis approval, or putting the right words underneath here. Those are the only two pages that LaTeX sometimes does not do the best job at, because universities are very particular about how much spacing appear on these title pages. And it seems to be the one location where they actually get a ruler out and check. So those you might do in Word, and you can easily insert them into the PDF later. So let's look under the hood into this folder. So there's a number of different separate folders that come with this one. And so this particular template has a single main file, which is what you would run, but it references each of these subfolders so that you could organize the materials separately for different chapters or your abbreviations list, your abstract, your acknowledgments, so that the main document is easier to read and you know exactly where certain chapters are located and exactly where your references, etc. are. So I've opened up the main file and the entire thing is only 94 lines long, so it's very brief. This uses the OSU Thesis class that does all the styling, and it uses the input folders, which I'll describe input in a moment, for look in the auxiliary files folder and read the configuration file. This is where we're going to have any updates or any information that we need for what we usually have in the headers. Commands and environments are the stylistic choices. Usually you're not going to need to change anything about commands and environments. And then the doc info is going to be those things that you need to customize for having your actual title and authorship, etc. The configuration is also going to tell chapters and other information that you want to add to this. Acknowledgement/acknowledgements document, dedication/dedication document, abstract/abstract document. Turning on the table of contents, list of tables. You could put a % if you wanted to turn off the list of tables, for example. Chapters information. This is where the input is going to be which of the documents are actually going to be included in when this gets run. So each of these was in a separate folder just for organization purposes. They're in this one is in the folder ch-introduction / and then the file is named introduction. The bibliography here is in a references bib file in the folder called references. The bibliography style in a dissertation, you can choose whatever is appropriate for your field. This is the APA style. All right, so let's look at some of those individual files. I will run quick build here. It might take a moment. I'm going to pause. Okay. So let's look into one of these auxiliary files. So we'll go to auxiliary files. These are the files that it's including as a table of contents over here. So let's look at the configuration file. That's where we've got the various use packages that we need to set up. So if you need to put a new use package in, that's where you do that. The commands and environments are mostly stylistic things, and again, you shouldn't need to change anything about those. The doc info, though, however, is the title, if you need to break any, need to break the line, you can use these 2 slashes, what the degree is, and the date, and the major, etc. So that information you do need to update. So that's the auxiliary files. One other thing to note in the configuration file as the OSU package is set up is this is where the graphics path, line 60, tell LaTeX where to find images. Because of this folder structure being organized into subfolders, they imagined that you would have a chapter folder, and inside of that chapter folder a subfolder named images. You can customize these, but these folders need to be inside of the folder where you're doing all of your other work here for this project, and it can be whatever name it needs to be, generally without spaces in the name. And so right now it's going to be looking for the ch-introduction folder, the images subfolder. It'll be looking in these 3 places for the names of figure files. That was an important part. So again, that was under configuration and graphics path. So if I did not incorporate specific chapter. So right now I should have 3 chapters. If I look at my table of contents, it should have them all listed from this template file. If I commented out one of these chapters and ran this again, the result was to go from chapter 1 to chapter what's now numbered 2, but it is the results chapter. And so if you needed to only show a certain subset of your work to your advisor or print it out for other sort of editing purposes, you would not have to, or this could be helpful for you. So the result in the table of contents was to only then have 2 chapters listed, as only 2 of them were shown here. So if I uncomment that, it will put it back in. So the nice thing about this main file being kind of brief, then you can have the actual code for the longer chapters separate, so that you don't have to try to scroll through hundreds of lines to get to the content that you want. There are many things that you can explore if you're going to do a long document like this. I encourage you to look at caption abbreviations. If you have a table or a figure that has a really long caption and you want it to just show up as something briefer in the list of figures, there is something called the short titles or short captions. Look that up. And there's various bibliography styles. You look at what's appropriate for your particular field and use that. All right, those are just some brief notes about the OSU LaTeX thesis template. Also providing a longer document to the UIUC, University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, LaTeX thesis class. It has a lot more documentation behind what are some of the options, and it talks about using this input for different chapters and different content. And so I encourage you to look at that if you are interested in this. This particular template was put together by a student. It was very practical and very functional, but not a lot of extra documentation. The Illinois one has been developed over the last 15 or so years and has a lot more documentation as part of that package.